And I know in Britain, for instance, they've talked about the effects of electromagnetic radiation on the general population because they've gone hell for water with broadbands. It's everywhere, and you just can't escape it across the country. And very high levels of it, too higher than most countries. And people are coming down with odd symptoms, and you can actually categorize the symptoms, and I've mentioned some of them before in previous shows, of the wireless radiation that's hitting you. We're not meant to be bombarded with this type of spiky microwave-type radiation, and we're not designed for it. It's not there in nature at these levels. And we're getting bombarded from all around us, from towers and from all the relays across cities, etc. And some people I know who live in big cities are always complaining to me how sick they feel. And they have batteries of these antennas on buildings just opposite them or right on top of their own roofs. So we're being affected by it. But there's an article here from the Sovereign Independent, and it says electromagnetic eugenics, wireless culling of the population. And it says what follows is a shocking video, a warning of the dangers of the zapping we all get from the eugenicists every day and night. No buzzwords, no spin, just the verifiable scientific facts, not running through the global propaganda engines. And she's used a term that I put out in the 98 in one of my first books. It's called The Trick of the Elect, and that's where electric comes from. It's a trick, you see. They love these little terms, the big boys, and they couldn't do in the system, they couldn't bring the system in of total control over the entire world and everyone's mind with computers and all data collection, etc., without the use of the computer. But it says the Celoton Scientific Panel recommends significant reduction of EMF exposure limits because of current scientific uncertainty and to protect the health of the vulnerable in society. In November 2009, a number of prominent scientists met at Celoton in Norway to discuss their concerns about the proliferation of radiation-emitting technology and the effects on health that this was believed to be having. They concluded that public exposure levels are too high, and that this leads to significant bio-effects such as cancers, infertility, well that will never get cancelled because they want infertility, DNA damage, mood changes, concentration and learning problems, Alzheimer's disease, ALS, sleep distortion and many other measures of health, disrupting the lives of millions of people. No account is taken of the synergistic effects of combinations of frequencies which could make these risks far worse. The Celoton Scientific Panel, composed of scientific experts present at the conference, are calling for a new approach to the protection of public health, with governments taking decisive action now to protect the lives of people, especially those who are vulnerable, predicted to be between 40 and 50% of the population. This include the elderly, the ill, those who are genetically and or immunologically challenged, and of course our growing and developing children and who are our future. We also need to protect our economic life, which could be devastated by the ill health of so many people of working age. The Celoton Scientific Panel agreed on 10 proposals, including the need for government action. It says here the global population is at risk. Sensitive populations are currently vulnerable. Government actions are warranted now based on evidence of serious disruption to biological systems. And they've found, it doesn't take much of this pulsing and current in the air to alter the body's system at all. It's pretty well immediate, in fact. You get immediate alterations in the biological systems of living organisms. And of course, long-term exposure, they claim, has not been tested. The burden of proof for the safety of radiation-emitting technologies should fall on producers and providers, not the consumers. EMF exposure should be reduced in advance of complete understanding of mechanisms of action. The current accepted measure of radiation risk, the specific absorption rate called SAR, is inadequate and misguided on safety and risk. I think Switzerland's got one of the lowest ones, but they're way ahead on health for the public. An international disease registry is needed to track time trends of illnesses, to correlate illnesses with exposures, and pre-market health testing and safety demonstration of all radiation-emitting technologies. Parity needed for occupational exposure standards. though workers may overall be healthier than the public in general, it also includes women of childbearing age whose fetuses could be damaged and men whose fertility could be compromised. That's for what little fertility got left. Functional impairment designation for persons with electrohypersensitivity. And I've gone through some of the other symptoms before. You can get rashes with this, incredible rashes, even amnesia at night and so on. And I've talked to some young people before who actually can actually hear these frequencies when they're very young. That's quite something else. And I'll put up a link along with this one to Ollie Johansson sites from the electromagnetic.health.org's videos section, and there's a whole bunch of videos there on these problems which you can look for yourself. And what gets me too is I'll read a little bit from this one at Electromagnetic Health. International scientists recommended that global governments adopt new exposure guidelines for electromagnetic radiation, pointing to biological hazards and risks to the genetic code from unchecked proliferation of wireless technologies. In this 18-minute video, Dr. Johansson from Sweden's renowned Karolinska Institute and chair of the Ceylon Scientific Panel announces a consensus agreement amongst international scientists on the need to reduce EMF, which is electromagnetic field exposures, to the population. The paper has just been published in the journal Reviews on Environmental Health. The Ceylon Scientific Panel's recommendations are extremely important given the unchecked proliferation of wireless radiation over the past decade, such as from cell towers, wireless routers, and cell phones, as well as because of the plans by many ignorant governments, and boy, I'll tell you, isn't that the term, ignorant governments, to blanket neighborhoods in new radiation-emitting utility smart meters, like the one they stuck in my wall there, that hums all the time. And I noticed afterwards, about 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, the nearest telegraph pole, they stuck an antenna on it to pick up this thing. So it's literally transmitting in high radiation levels, microwave. So anyway, I'll put these links up for you to peruse, and it's worthwhile going into, because for all you ones up there who are addicted to cell phones and so on, it's up to you. You can either shake your heads and say, no, I couldn't do without it, or I can't take precautions, or go ahead and just nuke yourselves. There's been so many articles put out on brain tumors, and the rate of brain tumors is 5 times more likely in the young by using cell phones than it is in adults, for instance. So it's up to you what you want to do about it. But people get addicted to these gadgets, and of course the big masters who rule the world want you to be addicted to these masters because it's tracking you everywhere you go. That's part of the reason. And it's also, you're also sending lots of data that they can then use back and put into your persona file, for your little remote avatar they've got in the Pentagon. You know, the Just You one. So I'll put these links up too at the end of the night at cuttingthroughthematrix.com.